Welcome to Grim Chronicles, where we dive into the darkest corners of history to uncover the stories that time tries to bury. Picture yourself in the heart of Tudor England, 1536, standing in the shadow of the Tower of London. Its cold stone walls hold secrets, and within them, a woman awaits her fate. A woman who was once England's most powerful queen, now a prisoner facing death. Her name is Boleyn, and her execution wasn't just a moment of violence. It was a calculated spectacle designed to erase her from history. On this channel, we don't settle for the sanitized versions you find in history books. We're here to peel back the layers and reveal the horrifying truth of Anne's final days. So, grab a seat, dim the lights, and let's step into the past to witness a story of betrayal, power, and unimaginable cruelty. Anne Boleyn was no ordinary woman. 3 years earlier, she had been crowned queen in a dazzling ceremony at Westminster Abbey, her ambition and wit captivating Henry VIII and reshaping England's future. She sparked a revolution, breaking the country from the Catholic Church to become Henry's wife. But by May 1536, that same ambition made her a target. Henry, obsessed with securing a male heir and growing tired of Anne's fiery spirit, decided she was a problem to be eliminated. This wasn't just about ending her life. It was about destroying everything she stood for, her legacy, her reputation, her very existence. The Tower of London, where Anne spent her final 17 days, wasn't just a prison, it was a stage for psychological torment. She had walked these halls before, preparing for her coronation, her head held high as England's new queen. Now, she was confined in a cell, her every word watched, her every hope crushed. Henry and his chief minister, Thomas Cromwell, played a cruel game, delaying her execution date again and again. Imagine waking each morning, wondering if this is the day you'll die, hearing footsteps outside your cell, and not knowing if they're coming for you. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate, a tactic to fray her nerves and break her spirit before she ever reached the scaffold, and hid her fear well. Witnesses described her as eerily calm, even joking about her fate, calling herself and sans tête, and without a head. But don't be fooled by her bravado. Modern psychologists would call this dissociation, a desperate defense against unbearable trauma. Behind her gallows humor was a woman unraveling, battered by accusations so vile they shocked even the hardened Tudor court. Adultery with multiple men, incest with her own brother, plotting to murder the king. These charges were lies, built on tortured confessions and rumors spread by enemies, but they were deadly effective. Henry didn't just want Anne dead. He wanted her name synonymous with scandal, her memory tainted forever. The accusations were part of a broader campaign, a masterclass in character assassination. 5 men, including Anne's brother George, were executed days before her, their deaths sealing the narrative of her guilt. By the time Anne faced her own trial, the public had been fed a steady diet of propaganda. Tales of her depravity whispered in taverns, penned by court poets, spread by Henry's loyalists. This wasn't just about securing a conviction. It was about erasing the queen who had once been celebrated. And yet, Anne faced her accusers with a defiance that unnerved them, her wit and composure a final stand against a system determined to destroy her. As the sun rose on May 19, 1536, Anne's final day began with a cruel brightness, the clear London sky a stark contrast to the darkness awaiting her. She hadn't slept, her nights spent in restless prayer, seeking solace in a faith that had once crowned her. Tower records note she requested the sacrament at 2 a.m., kneeling for hours, her mind fractured by exhaustion and fear. When the guards came for her, she was laughing with her ladies-in-waiting, not out of peace, but because her psyche was crumbling under the weight of what was to come. The walk to the scaffold was a grim reversal of her coronation procession. 3 years ago, courtiers had bowed to her. Now, they watched with cold indifference, guards at her side to prevent any desperate escape. The scaffold itself was a deliberate humiliation. Unlike the towering platforms of Hollywood, it stood just 3 feet high, forcing Anne to climb only a few steps, keeping her close to the jeering crowd. This wasn't a stage for dignity. It was a platform for shame. The atmosphere was anything but solemn. Historical records describe a carnival-like energy, with spectators encouraged to mock and shout. Henry's supporters had seated the crowd with agitators, ensuring the noise drowned out any sympathy. This was Tudor justice. Death wasn't enough. It had to be a warning, especially to women who dared to rise above their station. Before she knelt, and was allowed a final speech, a tradition that was less about mercy and more about control. The condemned were expected to affirm the king's justice, and Anne's words were a tightrope walk. "Good Christian people, I am come hither to die, for according to the law and by the law I am judged to die, and therefore I will speak nothing against it." She didn't confess guilt, but she didn't openly defy Henry either, a calculated move to protect her daughter, Elizabeth, from further harm. Even in her final moments, Anne was navigating a political minefield, her intelligence shining through the fear. Then came the blindfold, not a kindness but a necessity to keep her still. A flinch could botch the execution, and Henry's expensive swordsman from Calais wasn't about to let that happen. Unlike the English axe, which often required multiple blows, the French sword was designed for a single, clean strike. And knelt upright, a French tradition that demanded she hold herself steady through sheer will. Witnesses said her lips moved in prayer, her blindfolded eyes darting as she strained to hear the swordsman's approach. That moment, waiting blind for the blade, was a torture all its own, the silence amplifying her terror. When the sword fell, it was over in an instant, the cut clean and precise. But what happened next is what haunts me most. Anne's head hit the scaffold, and for a few agonizing seconds, her eyes and lips kept moving. This wasn't myth, it was biology. The brain can remain conscious for up to 30 seconds after decapitation, a fleeting window of awareness in a body no longer whole. Some claimed her lips tried to form words, perhaps continuing the prayer cut short by the blade. The sight was so horrifying that several spectators fainted, others turning away in revulsion. The executioner held her head aloft, blood dripping, as proof of the king's justice, a final act of dehumanization. The indignity didn't end there. No coffin had been prepared for Anne. Her ladies-in-waiting, overcome with grief, scrambled to find an arrow chest to hold her head and body. They wrapped her severed head in linen, their hands trembling as they performed this grim task. She was buried in an unmarked grave in the Tower's chapel, without proper Christian rites, as if Henry hoped her memory would crumble with her body. Meanwhile, he was at Whitehall Palace, celebrating his engagement to Jane Seymour, a chilling reminder of how completely he had discarded Anne. But her story didn't end with that crude burial, because the echoes of her death would resonate far beyond the scaffold. The day after Anne's execution, Henry announced his engagement to Jane Seymour, and within 2 weeks, they were married in a quiet ceremony at Whitehall. The speed is staggering. A queen executed one day, a new bride the next. This wasn't just heartlessness. It was strategy. Anne's death was a political necessity, clearing the path for a new wife who might give Henry the male heir he craved. Jane, demure and unthreatening, was the opposite of and her swift elevation was meant to signal stability. But the court was left reeling, the trauma of Anne's death lingering like a shadow over Henry's reign. Those who witnessed the execution carried scars that didn't fade. Anne's ladies-in-waiting, forced to handle her severed head and body, were particularly haunted. Some suffered nightmares for years, one reportedly fleeing court to enter a convent, unable to stomach the brutality of Henry's world. These women weren't just bystanders. They were forced to participate in the aftermath, cleaning up the wreckage of a state-sanctioned murder. Their silence was expected, but their pain was profound, a reminder that Anne's tragedy wasn't hers alone. It touched everyone who had served her. The broader court felt the impact too. Anne's death sent a message. No one was safe. Henry's court was already a place of paranoia, where alliances shifted and loyalty was a gamble. But her execution raised the stakes. Courtiers who had once praised and now avoided her name, knowing a misstep could land them in the Tower. Thomas Wyatt, the poet who watched her execution from his own cell, mourned her little throat that had once worn jewels. His words a rare glimpse into the personal toll of her death. Even in a court built on ambition, some felt the loss deeply, their grief hidden behind masks of compliance. Then there's Elizabeth, Anne's daughter, not yet 3 when her mother was killed. The execution didn't just orphan her. It stripped her of her identity. Declared illegitimate, Elizabeth was removed from the line of succession, her household dissolved, her status reduced to that of a royal outcast. Court records show she was left without proper clothing or attendance, a toddler neglected as a direct result of her mother's disgrace. Yet, this child would grow up to become Elizabeth I, one of England's greatest monarchs, her mother's intelligence and resilience shining through in ways Henry could never have foreseen. Henry's campaign to erase and didn't stop at the scaffold. Her portraits were burned, her emblems chiseled from palace walls, her name forbidden in court. Poets who once celebrated her now vilified her, painting her as a scheming adulteress. This was about controlling history, ensuring and was remembered as a villain, not a victim. Even the choice of a French swordsman was spun as mercy, a way to paint Henry as compassionate rather than cruel. But the truth slipped through the cracks. Letters, poems, accounts from those who knew her survived, pieced together centuries later by historians determined to restore her voice. The execution shaped the Tudor court for years to come, creating a climate of fear that lingered through Henry's reign. Other wives would follow and to the scaffold, but hers was the first to expose the full brutality of his rule. It was a turning point, a moment when the court realized no one, not even a queen, was beyond his reach. The fear it instilled shaped the decisions of those who came after, from Jane Seymour's cautious obedience to Catherine Howard's tragic missteps. Anne's death wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was a warning to an entire kingdom. This brings us to the heart of why Anne Boleyn's story matters, even 5 centuries later. Her execution wasn't just about a queen losing her head. It was about power, gender, and the manipulation of truth. Henry didn't just want Anne dead. He wanted her unmade, her reputation destroyed, her achievements nullified, her daughter delegitimized. The charges against her were so outlandish they'd be laughed out of a modern courtroom. But through torture, propaganda, and public spectacle, Henry convinced much of England she deserved her fate. This was state-sanctioned gaslighting, a lesson in how power can rewrite reality. What makes this story so chilling is how modern it feels. The tactics used against and spreading false narratives, controlling public perception, silencing dissent, are all too familiar in our age of misinformation. Henry's court was a machine of manipulation using poets, records, even church bells to shape the story. Yet, despite all this, Anne's voice endured. Historians have restored her story, showing us a woman who was flawed but formidable, ambitious but unfairly condemned. Her unmarked grave, once a symbol of erasure, is now a pilgrimage site for those who honor her memory. Anne's story also forces us to confront the role of gender in power. She was a woman who rose too high, who challenged the expectations of her time. In Tudor England, a queen was meant to be a silent partner, producing heirs and supporting her king. Anne was outspoken, educated, unafraid to spar with Henry on matters of religion and politics. Her ambition made her a target, her death a warning to other women. Know your place or pay the price. Yet, through Elizabeth, Anne's legacy triumphed, her daughter's reign proving that the bloodline Henry tried to erase was stronger than his cruelty. The trauma of Anne's execution didn't just affect her. It scarred those who witnessed it, from her ladies-in-waiting to the courtiers forced to watch in silence. It created a court where fear was a constant companion, where loyalty to the king meant survival. And it left Elizabeth to grow up in the shadow of her mother's disgrace, only to rise as a monarch who would outshine her father. Anne's story is a testament to resilience, a reminder that even the most powerful attempts to erase someone can fail in the face of truth. So, why does Anne Boleyn's execution still grip us? Because it's not just about 1536. It's about the fragility of truth when confronted with absolute power. It's about the cost of ambition, the price of defying expectations, and the strength of those who refuse to be forgotten. On Grim Chronicles, we tell these stories to provoke, to make you think about the past and its echoes in our world today. Anne's death wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a legacy that outlasted her enemies, a warning about the dangers of unchecked power and the enduring power of truth. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the shadows of history. If the story gripped you, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next dive into the past. Drop a comment below. Tell us what you think about Anne's story or what dark corner of history you want us to explore next. Let's keep uncovering the grim truths together. Until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep chasing the shadows with Grim Chronicles.